The night she whispered that she hadn't let a man into her life for 2 years wasn't loud or dramatic. There were no tears, no raised voice, just a truth spoken softly, like something fragile that had survived being broken once before. It was a kind of confession that lives between breaths, shaped by loss, fear, and long nights of quiet endurance. No one else heard it. But the moment a single father stepped into a carefully guarded world, everything she had locked away began to tremble, as if life itself was gently asking to be let back in. Her name was Rachel Moore. Rachel lived in a small coastal town in Oregon, where fog rolled in slowly and lingered, much like old memories that refused to fade. She worked at a modest community library, a place of whispers, worn pages, and people escaping their lives for just a few hours. Rachel understood that need better than most. 2 years earlier, her life had cracked open when a relationship she trusted collapsed in a way that left no visible scars, but plenty of invisible ones. She never spoke about it, not because she didn't feel the pain, but because explaining it felt heavier than carrying it alone. So she did the one thing that made sense at the time. She closed the door on love. She told herself she was safer that way. Rachel learned how to survive on routine. Same walk every morning. Same coffee, same polite smile for strangers she never allowed to get close. Her apartment felt empty, not because she lacked warmth or taste, but because she refused to attach meaning to spaces that could one day remind her of loss. Friends tried to set her up. She declined without explanation. Letting someone see her fully again felt unbearable, like reopening a wound that had only just stopped bleeding. Miles away, in a neighboring town, lived a man named Andrew Collins. Andrew was a single father to a 7-year-old boy named Noah, a quiet, observant child with curious eyes and resilience that mirrored his father's own. Andrew's wife had passed away after a long illness, leaving him to rebuild a life he never imagined living alone. He worked as a residential electrician. Early mornings, late calls, constant exhaustion. But every night, without fail, he read to his son, packed lunches, checked homework, and reminded himself that love didn't end with loss. It simply changed shape. Andrew didn't see himself as strong or brave. He felt broken in ways he rarely acknowledged. Dating wasn't something he thought about. Survival was. His world revolved around keeping Noah safe, fed, and emotionally whole. Somewhere along the way, Andrew had learned how to sit with grief instead of running from it, how to listen without trying to fix everything. And without realizing it, he had become the kind of man who understood pain simply by respecting it. Their paths crossed on an ordinary afternoon at the library. Andrew had brought Noah to find books for a school project. Rachel noticed them immediately, not because they were loud, but because they were quietly connected. Andrew knelt beside his son, listening with full attention, never rushing, never distracted. Something stirred in Rachel's chest, a warmth she had almost forgotten. She helped them find the books they needed, her voice steady, her smile professional. Andrew thanked her with a sincerity that carried no expectations, just gratitude. Over the following weeks, Andrew and Noah became familiar faces. Rachel watched from behind the desk as father and son settled into corners, reading together, laughing softly. She told herself she was simply observing, but the truth was deeper. Their presence felt grounding, safe. Andrew never lingered longer than necessary, never crossed boundaries, never turned courtesy into flirtation. And somehow, that restraint became the very thing that slowly weakened Rachel's walls. One rainy evening, the library hosted a small community event. Andrew volunteered to help set up chairs. Rachel stayed late to organize materials. Their conversation stayed simple. Books, weather, parenting, work. No tension, no pressure. Just two people sharing pieces of their lives without fear. For the first time in years, Rachel felt herself exhale. And without realizing it, something inside her began to open, quietly, carefully, and completely unprepared for what was about to follow. As the weeks passed, Andrew's presence became part of Rachel's routine. Quiet, steady, and unassuming. He never announced himself, never demanded attention. He simply arrived with Noah, returned books, asked thoughtful questions, and left with the same gentle courtesy. And somehow, that consistency felt louder than any grand gesture. Rachel caught herself noticing small details. The way Andrew always let Noah speak first. The patience in his voice. The way he listened, not just to his son, but to everyone. It unsettled her, not because it felt wrong, but because it felt real. She tried to remind herself of the promise she had made 2 years ago. No more letting people in. No more emotional risks. Yet every time Andrew smiled at her from across the counter, that promise felt heavier to carry. Noah, unaware of the emotional tension quietly forming, became the bridge Rachel never intended to cross. He waved at her eagerly when they arrived, asked her questions about books. Once, he handed her a drawing of a dinosaur holding a library card. Rachel laughed, a real laugh, the kind that surprised her. Andrew noticed. He didn't comment on it. He never did. But his eyes softened, as if he understood something unspoken had just shifted. Their conversations grew longer. Still simple, still safe, but deeper. Andrew spoke about learning to cook after his wife passed, about how Noah misses mother in quiet, unexpected ways. Rachel shared pieces of herself too, her love for writing, her fear of being fully seen, her comfort in quiet places. Neither of them rushed the connection. Neither of them tried to define it. And yet, Rachel felt something changing inside her. She found herself waiting for the sound of the library door opening, wondering if it would be Andrew and Noah, feeling disappointed on days it wasn't. That realization scared her more than anything else. At night, alone in her apartment, old memories whispered warnings. Remember what happened last time. Remember how much it hurt. She told herself Andrew was different, but that was exactly what she had once believed before. Andrew, for his part, never crossed a line. He never asked personal questions Rachel wasn't ready to answer, never hinted at wanting more. He respected her silence as much as her words, and that respect became dangerous, because it made her feel safe. The turning point came during a storm that rolled through town with unexpected force. Rain slammed against windows. Power flickered. The streets emptied early. The library stayed open longer than planned, offering shelter to anyone caught outside. Andrew and Noah arrived soaked, laughing softly as they shook rain from their jackets. Emergency lamps cast warm shadows across the room. The world outside felt distant, quiet. Something about the dim light made everything feel more honest. Rachel watched Andrew kneel to help Noah dry his shoes. The tenderness in that simple act pressed against her chest. She realized then that she trusted him, not because he promised safety, but because he never pretended life was without risk. Later that evening, as the storm calmed, Andrew hesitated before leaving. "Would you like to join us for dinner sometime?" he asked gently. Nothing fancy, just simple. Rachel's heart raced. She didn't answer right away. She nodded politely, said she'd think about it. But for days afterward, the question echoed in her mind. Accepting meant stepping into his world. Meeting Noah outside the library. Crossing a boundary she had spent years reinforcing. When she finally said yes, it felt monumental. Andrew's house wasn't polished or perfect. Toys were scattered. Photos lined the walls, some old, some new. The space felt lived in. Honest. Alive. Noah greeted her with shy excitement. Andrew moved through the kitchen with quiet confidence, cooking while listening. The warmth of the room slowly loosened something inside Rachel she hadn't realized was clenched. Over time, she began spending more evenings with him, helping Noah with homework, sharing meals, laughing in ways that startled her. Andrew never pushed for explanations about her past. He understood healing had its own timeline. That patience became a mirror, showing Rachel what safety could look like. Still, fear lingered, and on one quiet night, with rain tapping softly against the windows, Rachel felt the weight of a truth pressing against the chest. She realized the moment had come, not for drama, not for declarations, but for honesty. She took a breath and whispered the words she hadn't spoken aloud in 2 years. The night Rachel finally spoke the truth, it wasn't dramatic. There was no trembling voice, no rush of tears, just a quiet moment suspended between trust and fear. They sat at Andrew's kitchen table while Noah slept down the hall. The house was still. Rain tapped gently against the windows, as if the world itself was listening. Rachel stared at her hands for a long moment before looking up. "I haven't let a man into my life for 2 years," she whispered. The words fell heavier once spoken, like setting something fragile down after carrying it for too long. Andrew didn't interrupt, didn't react with surprise, didn't ask questions. He simply listened. That was when Rachel realized this moment mattered, not because of what she had said, but because of how it was received. Andrew nodded slowly. "Thank you for trusting me with that," he said. "No judgment, no pressure, just respect." Something inside Rachel shifted. She had always believed letting someone in meant losing control. That vulnerability was dangerous. That opening her heart would erase the progress she'd made surviving on her own. But sitting across from Andrew, she understood something new. Letting someone in didn't mean losing herself. It meant choosing to be seen. Their relationship didn't suddenly become perfect. Healing never works that way. There were moments when Rachel pulled back, when fear resurfaced without warning. Andrew noticed, but he didn't chase or retreat. He stayed steady, present, honest. Andrew had his own struggles. Balancing fatherhood and emotional connection wasn't easy. Some nights, memories of his late wife returned uninvited. Grief still lived quietly in his home. But instead of hiding those moments, he shared them, with care, not burden. Rachel learned that strength didn't always look like confidence. Sometimes it looked like patience. Sometimes it looked like choosing not to run. Noah noticed the changes before either of them did. He grew comfortable around Rachel, asking her to read to him, showing her his drawings, sitting closer during movie nights. One evening, he casually referred to her as family. Rachel froze. Andrew watched her carefully, ready to step in, but she didn't pull away. She smiled. That night, Rachel cried alone, not from fear, but from gratitude. Weeks turned into months. Life remained imperfect. There were misunderstandings, emotional setbacks, quiet conversations that stretched late into the night. But everything was grounded in honesty. Rachel found herself decorating her apartment for the first time, hanging photos, adding color, letting meaning exist again. Andrew noticed. He never commented, just smiled. One evening, walking along the fog-covered shoreline near Rachel's home, Andrew spoke softly. "I don't need promises," he said. "I just need truth." Rachel took his hand, and for the first time in years, she didn't feel afraid of the future. Their story wasn't about being saved. Rachel wasn't rescued by a man. Andrew wasn't healed by a relationship. They chose courage, together. Rachel learned that closing her heart had kept her safe, but opening it allowed her to truly live. Andrew learned that love could return in unexpected forms, bringing light into places once darkened by loss. And Noah grew surrounded by something every child deserves to witness: two adults choosing kindness, patience, and emotional honesty. Their love wasn't loud. It didn't demand attention. It grew quietly, rooted in respect, understanding, and the bravery to begin again. And sometimes that is the most powerful kind of love there is. NCTA optional for YouTube retention. If this story touched you, if it reminded you how hard and how beautiful it is to trust again, take a moment to share, and comment one word this story made you feel. Healing, faith, love, courage.